we got that we being to start to show a few more of the cards, a few more of our cards about how we had envisioned, getting this whole thing to work, FXUSD, and how the mechanism is designed and everything. Thank you very much, CryptoVestor. Appreciate it, and I hope that it provides you guys some I hope it provides all of you guys some enjoyment as well as some fodder for, I always kind of think of anything that we sort of write on the team internally as being like as focused as possible on clarity and precision, and then the kind of the real powerful step is the one after that, where everybody can kind of come to that place and use that like clarity and precision to sort of make endless derivatives of whichever things are kind of most exciting to you, or that you think is going to get the most ROI for your boosting money, boosting time and effort. So
yeah, I'm always really curious to see like the community made kind of content that gets kind of produced out. I know Sovereign Llama put something out yesterday that was kind of interesting, that he compared it to sort of like centralized stablecoins, and it was kind of a cool little comparison there. He drew some diagrams, and so that was cool. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing with FXUSD is there's, as you can see from the article, obviously there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and we try to like pull it out and try to make it very clear. And Kruger's got some tremendous diagrams in there.
Thank you. I discovered Excalidraw, which, based on the fact that I recognize the font from like a zillion other drawings, I seem to be the last person in the world to discover it. But it's a slick little system for making simple diagrams. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I guess do we want to kind of like walk through it a little bit? Just
sure.
Sure. Okay.
Go ahead. Let's do that. So, all right, I'll so the idea here is to kind of like piece together the FXUSD sort of system in a way that is like that builds complexity over time, right? Over the article, I mean, so that we can start with something that we know and then understand how it's put together. Like the thing with FXUSD is there are a lot of different ways. Like the underlying mechanism, like the stable leverage pair, the underlying mechanism literally from day one, like in the original white paper, we commented that, beta equals 0 stablecoins are just as possible as the beta equals 0.1 FETH that we have and that we deployed at the launch of FXUSD. It's like a simple parameter change. But the thing is, and this is part of the reason why we went FETH instead of any USD pegged one in the beginning, is that every different pair creates its own stable derivative token, right? And that's not necessarily a good thing. I don't think FFX would be successful if it basically just was a token multiplier, where every single token that comes in the back end can potentially be turned into 2 more on the front end. The value quickly gets diluted, I think, right? You get fragmentation, particularly when you're talking about a stable coin, right? And it doesn't make sense to have 5 different stable coins all pegged to a dollar, but it does make sense to have a stable coin pegged to a dollar, right? So anyway, we step through the article. We start with we give the intro of and so this looks like we all understand. Although again, this core kernel of levered and stable derivatives of a reserve, we still have to keep banging that drum, right? We have to keep iterating and trying to find the simplest language that we can here, because that kernel is the thing you need to understand all of FFX. And for people who are brand new and haven't even smelt it before, this is kind of where we always have to start. To talk about this whole idea of one token that acts like a levered, one token that acts like a stable, but both always redeemable from the reserve for whatever its current value is calculated to be. What's interesting and what's different here, as I point out, is all of the stables minted against any particular if you want to mint stable staked ETH, right? The only place that direct stable token, so I'm talking about a like 1 layer deep, the only place you can hold a stable coin based only on staked ETH, a USD peg stable coin based only on staked ETH, is in the rebalance pool for that token. So it does not exist in a liquid way. It instead, you can always have it. And now the other thing that I think we should be clear about here is that just because you can't withdraw that specific stable coin into the world does not mean, or I really wanted to try to make possible, which is that I don't want to say things are locked in the rebalance pool, but what I want to say is that they're automatically in the rebalance pool, and the only way you can get them, that you can get your deposit out, is either via the reserve, which you can do anytime, absolutely anytime, or this new mechanism, which is basically taking the next step and minting it into FXUSD. So the rebalance pool is, yes, it's their home. Exactly. Very much in the Happy Gilmore ball in the whole sense.
Yeah, they live on the space station, and when they go out into space shuttles, they're FXUSD go.
Oh, are you gonna dust off that?
Dust off the analogy, yeah.
Dust
man.
off the analogy and.
Maybe I'll have to do that. I'll have to add the FXUSD to the space station. But I mean, it
Right.
it very much applies. I mean, I think this FXUSD is a great solution to basically introduce the stable leverage pair as sort of a core concept, right, for LSDs. I think that's sort of like the big thing, right?
And the selling, the things that make that core mechanism amazing are like the two-way protection from DPEG, right? It can't, DPEGs both up and down are protected, and the rebalance pool built in real yield. That is huge, right? Be able to keep stable exposure, but still access yields, real yields coming from the reserve, and then of course the idea that you can get in and out of these tokens with zero slippage and no swap pool liquidity depth required. Now, again, this is one of those ones I tried to be as careful as possible, because I don't want to accidentally give people the impression that transactions on mainnet are free. They are not. So, in terms of there's no slippage because there's no there's no swap pool that has an imbalance that you have to sort of eat when you swap through it. But you have your normal fees that you would have to do in order to mint and redeem. So there are the minting and redeeming process goes. It's not free, but it is zero slippage, and that becomes more and more important with larger and larger ticket sizes. So we try to talk about zero slippage less as a sticking up for the little guy, and more as for bigger players as well. But yeah, then of course it's all about the is it a 0.25 mint fee? Off the top of my head, I do not recall. I
mean, it'll be competitive, right, with other sort of like minting of stable coins.
I think the idea is to set it. Well, we'll have to confirm offline. I think the idea is it's going to be set essentially the same as the same as FX ETH.
Yeah, we'll have to. There's still a lot of details, right? That ongoing, but it's designed to be as competitive as any other sort of, you
well, and it's all really about making sure that the mechanism is working optimally, right? So I expect we'll start in the same place that FE starts, would be my guess, and then go from there to sort of iterate towards whatever. Obviously it's important that the fees strike the right balance between creating, because those fees introduce those fees introduce a delta between the price of the token on the protocol and the secondary price. So they have to be kept pretty tight in order to make sure that all of the prices track properly.
Yeah. So
yeah, exactly. And of course, CryptoVestor, the other thing too is that like it also becomes a question of volume, right? There's like I anticipate that many of these fees are going to evolve over time, and you know what, we're going to be like with everything. I mean, we've been talking about this in the context of Clever a lot recently, which is just that like, things aren't fixed forever in terms of the parameters that we're deploying at. The team takes a crack at what we think is the best place to start, but definitely we the team and we the community should all be kind of watching these things and chiming in if we think that there's something holding up growth somewhere in a parameter. So
yeah, one of the things I think with FXUSD that's like it's kind of occurred to me is that for LSD protocols that like have their own liquidity pool, LP on Curve, and then also some of their own protocol owned incentive tokens like VLCVX or SDCRV. They can incentivize that pool if it's paired with FXUSD in some way, and that's also like an indirect incentive as well to draw their LSD into the FXUSD. So it's like not only can you directly bribe for FXN emissions on FX itself, but you can do so through like say Lido forms their own TriCrypto, right, with FXUSD, and then you can incentivize that as well. And so like you have like two levers, or PayPal or whoever,
for example. Well, and exactly, and I tried to kind of get at this, I think, in the first article, which is you're talking about the fact that because FXUSD is partly backed by the LSDs, like the particular LSD in question, like any LSD that's included in the backing of FXUSD, because FXUSD represents partially some of that, it makes that liquidity incentive later on. If you use FXUSD in your liquidity incentives later on, it makes it automatically more efficient, right? Because now when you make incentives for liquidity, you've got your token on one side and somebody else's token on the other side. And so you are getting, like, if your pool's in balance, half of the money you're paying in incentives is going to pay to build the other guy's liquidity, right? And now the other guy might be ETH if you're paying for a pool 2 with ETH on the other side. And like nobody from the Ethereum going up to help you with your bills in order to lower your pool 2 liquidity costs. But when the underlying token is FXUSD and you are like you are part of the backing of that, then you get this really nice sort of sympathetic effect where using FXD on the other side of your token means it's a token that's entirely you, but it's paired against a token that's at least partly you. So like you have like in the case of an even any other kind of pool too.
I guess it's like, I mean, like Curve has had that issues with like, USDC or whatever, they get like a free ride, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Well, exactly. Like those big guys get a free ride, and then anybody who pairs against them is just kind of like paying it, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Time to switch that out.
Yeah, and it's just anyway, it's one of those things. And the thing though, like ultimately these kinds of messages, these are like DAO level messages, right? These are the kind of things that we need to, and we rely on the community, and the community does an amazing job. The CryptoVestors and the Cyrils and the Taos and just everybody. I mean, I'm not going to list everybody off. I love all of you, but and DeFi Advisor and Meta, and okay, now I am listing everybody.
What about me?
I can't think of anyone else. Is anybody? Can anybody think of? No. Okay. No. Okay. Anyhow,
back to my crypto kids music.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyhow, so that's that. We got to get that message up because I think again, this mechanism is really pretty. I think that by the time we get into the I think by the time we get into the headspace of people who have liquidity concerns and LSDs, and by the way, I say like as if it hasn't happened yet, our DMs are blowing up. Is that right, K-Mets? Like,
Yeah,
yes. So
it's and like with some pretty notable like names and players in the space that have seen FX and are and really understand sort of the power of the stable leverage pair. I'm kind of blown away by the attention of who we've garnered, and so
yeah, who we're chatting with.
Yeah,
and it's got to be a little cagey about it, but yeah,
Yeah.
definitely that's the name of the game. And this story up to this point in time for FXUSD is really, the article is really half about why it's awesome for LSDs, but the meta point of the article is, hey, if this thing has an amazing engine that is powered by LSDs using it to their own best, in their own best interests, and that the side effect of providing this really quite valuable service is that FXUSD, the token itself, just automatically and rapidly grows this huge potential depth of liquidity, right? As the size of those constituent stable leverage pairs gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it basically just is a for free. It's a for free liquidity pool of FXUSD, right? Anybody can come along and mint it just on demand immediately. I need some stables, without having to think at all about the incentives in those rebalance pools. Let the LSD protocols fight over building up deep liquidity in those underlying rebalance pools for people who want to think of FXUSD as a token, either for their own use or, to be fair, more likely for trying to get a sense on where FFX is going.
Yeah.
Right. Trying to get a sense of FXN maybe as a token, and whether or not it's the kind of thing you wanna hold. That's going to be one of the things you're looking at. Is what are they building and who's going to be using it, and can it do what they say it can do? So the whole secret sauce here is a mechanism that builds the liquidity without the protocol having to pay for it.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool trick.
Yeah. So, all right, let's keep rolling here. We go to the one token to rule them all. We talk about how multiple stable leverage pairs can be included in the FXUSD backing. And basically, the key message here is that once a particular reserve has been approved, to be included in FXUSD backing, then its stable tokens, its stable derivatives, so the stable derivatives of that particular reserve, now qualify for including into FXUSD, and that means that you could take those tokens from the rebalance pool where they may have lived right off the bat and mint them into FXUSD. Now, you can also, by the way, and the diagrams, I'm still kind of wringing my hands a little bit about whether I could clear these up a little more. But the diagrams show that stables go straight to the rebalance pool, and then they can continue on to FXUSD. In fact, that in and out of the rebalance pool step is kind of it's not strictly necessary, because the important thing is that you have a token that is backed by an approved reserve that is not in the rebalance pool. So the criteria for inclusion to FXUSD, that is going to be entirely driven by governance. So there will be a risk assessment done as a new token looks to be included, and then there will be two key parameters set. So each stable leverage pair is going to have a minting cap. So in the same way that FFX has a cap in place at all times up to this point, and we're getting kind of close, I think, to our latest one. But right now there's a 10,000 ETH cap, and 9,270 ETH minted so far. So that 10,000 ETH cap is associated with the particular stable leverage pair. In this case, it's for FETH and XETH, but each individual stable leverage pair will have a cap. And then there will be a second limit which is what dollar value of that reserve should be allowed to be included in FXUSD. So basically, if we have your favorite LSD token and the stable version, and we say like we limit the stable leverage pair to 1,000 of your to 1,000. If it's included in FXUSD, we might set the FXUSD limit to like whatever 20% of that or something lower, right? It's like 200 ETH worth or something. I'm just pulling numbers out of my ass here, guys. This is not real. Point is that there's two different gates. The first gate is how big can your stable leverage pool get? And then the second gate is how much of those stables can go on to back FXUSD. And by having those separate limits, you really allow, because you want to allow the rebalance pool. Generally there's a lot less concerns on how big that gets, right? People who are deposited in that rebalance pool to earn or are holding the leverage token for that specific reserve, the idea is they understand that the risk they are taking, it is the risk associated with just that token. As soon as you go the next step and you start releasing those stable tokens into the backing of FXUSD, then of course every FXUSD that is in the world now takes some fractional exposure to that reserve, right? So we can limit the total impact of a given reserve on FXUSD separately from how big they can grow their internal rebalance pool mechanism.
Yeah, I think it's actually like really cool that basically, if you're not in, if you're just like a normal stable leverage pair, I say normal, but you're not part of the FXUSD. Basically, it's zero, right? I mean, your exposure to FXUSD, but
that's right.
And so it can always, that if you're not sure about like you just want to kind of like beta test them into the FX, you could always like sort of like a 1% exposure, 2%, or whatever it winds up being. But it's a very it basically is sort of like that safety valve, right? Of just sort of like and so FXUSD, it's always going to be composed of hopefully the safest, most reliable, battle tested assets. So
well, that's the idea, and of course all of this is all governance controlled, and it's all going to be publicly made risk assessments. And I mean, frankly, there's a pretty good and well established sort of set of tracks laid down by the community for how to talk about adding new collateral to a stable coin, how to evaluate it, and how to set its risk limits.
Yeah, and so it's man, I get excited thinking about the system. It's so cool.
It is, really neat. And so okay, so let's keep rolling here. So what's the net at the end here? Well, FXUSD is backed 1-to-1 by stables that are minted from these these stable leverage pairs for like within the limits that we talked about just now, only for the certain accepted ones and only within their maximum. But you can mint from a user perspective, you can mint FXUSD either directly from the LSD, or you can mint it from any deposit in a rebalance pool that is from a backing, from a backing a token backing, a reserve backing FXUSD. So, if you've got some Frax ETH and it's sitting in the rebalance pool, you have the option to withdraw that directly into FXUSD, right? And that actually is more gas efficient than minting. If you're already there, it's a smaller, gas wise, it's a smaller step to get out of that rebalance pool, I believe, than it is to go all the way from the reserve token. But going from the reserve token to the stable is a mint transaction, right? So there's a fee there, and then once you're in the stable, then you are deposited. That can go straight into the FXUSD backing, and you get your FXUSD.
Yeah, and if all this is kind of like turning your brain into scrambled eggs, like it's the goal is to like abstract out as much of this as possible for the end user, and just make it real simple.
Yeah, and that's an article like this that's why I say an article like this is really for you guys in the community, where you guys have a pretty good, like, you guys know how this works, and the thing is that we want you guys to understand it as best you can, like as well as possible, because that's where all of the special sauce is for how this thing can grow, right? It's in the details, it's in the implementation. That's like does a user of FXUSD care that the underlying mechanism is like built on this whole clever system of like providing services to LSDs? They don't need to care, and hopefully we can get to a place where that just becomes a detail that only the nerds kind of care about, right? The idea here, the goal, the golden castle at the end of the road is like huge available liquidity that you don't have to think about. It's just there, and you just rely on it like a stable coin, right? That is how we intend to pick fights with centralized stable coins, because that's what centralized stable coins have, right? They're minted on demand against assets that aren't really in question, and there's just sort of like a general sense of there's no amount of liquidity that you couldn't access through USDC, right? So
that's the goal. Yeah.
Being able to create that in a decentralized way is hard, and if we can do it. So that's where we're headed.
Pretty exciting.
You know it. So let's see the mechanism backing FXUSD, blah, blah, blah. It's complicated. You got a lot of different arrows, but really in the end, from the point of view of a user, you've got your way to earn, and then you've got your way to take your FXUSD on to somewhere else, right? So if you wanted to go farm a different pair, or maybe KMETs, you just want to hold some FXD in your wallet because you think that that is the safest way to hold stables, and that no amount of wacky legislation or crazy smoky backroom banking deals can hurt you. So anyhow. So there's a detail here that I go into, which is the depositing, right? So I say it's called depositing again. Basically, if you've got FXUSD now, let's say you've got FXUSD, and imagine a future where there are 3 different LSDs that are accepted into the FXUSD backing. The thing is that FXUSD in general has a reserve, as we've talked about, right? And that reserve is made up of those stable derivative tokens from all of the pairs, all the constituent pairs. Well, that reserve consists of real tokens, like everything in the reserve is a claim on real value that is stored, and it's available right now. Am I making myself clear? I don't think so. Because you have a reserve of real tokens, what it means is that if you want to redeem your FXUSD, you can redeem it for any token that is in its reserve. So if you get into a situation, for example, where you minted a bunch of FXUSD with your, like, let's say your favorite LSD gets accepted, and now you've minted some of the stables from your favorite LSD, and now you've gone and you've made some FXUSD from that. So those stables from your favorite LSD are in the FXUSD reserve, but probably there aren't nearly as many of those in the FXUSD reserve as there are, for example, the staked ETH ones, right? The reserve of FXUSD could have a lot more of those staked ETH tokens, because maybe it has a higher limit, like almost certainly it has a higher limit than whatever crazy LSD KMETs is investing in this week. But that's always going to be the case. There's going to be more of one type of token in the reserve than the other. So it's possible that you could mint your way into FXUSD with one token, and then if somehow that token gets redeemed out by somebody else, you may not be able to leave the way you came in, right? You might have to take your FXD out through one of the other. Once you've got FXUSD, you've got FXUSD. You do not have the backing token anymore, right? So there's a little bit of a subtlety here where it's like there's an edge case where you can't get the exact token back out that you put in.
Yeah, so CryptoVestor asks a question, how does it choose where it goes? There's a routing mechanism, isn't that correct, Kruger? That basically...
So you can manually enter in via any particular rate. So for example, if you have staked ETH, you can mint FXUSD with staked ETH, right? And so you choose based on what you provide. However, if the case is like, again, there's edge cases here that will very likely never be an issue, but just I feel compelled to talk about them. So like, if a particular stable from a certain reserve has reached its limit and the limit hasn't been increased, then you would not be able to mint more FXUSD from that because it's at the limit. So you could make FXUSD, like you could mint FXUSD, but you'd have to go in via a different token, one of the other stable leverage pairs. And then slight brain malfunction here. So the zapping is going to be where the routing comes into play, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to just zap in through USDC or something that's not, like if you aren't trying to go in via a specific one, then we'll basically route you through most likely whichever pool has the deepest liquidity.
There you go.
We've talked about it and it's just not, my brain is not cooperating with me this morning. So you say like, is it the highest yield rebalance pool? Well, it's not necessarily, because remember that minting tokens to FXUSD, they don't go in the rebalance pool. So the rebalance pool yield doesn't actually enter into it. The one place where it matters is if you mint some new tokens, if you mint some new FXUSD with a given base token, you slightly increase the yield in its rebalance pool, right? Because now its reserve is bigger, but its rebalance pool has the same amount of deposits. Like a bigger reserve means more fees, but they're spread over the same number of rebalance pool deposits. So again, this is the reason why it's so like such a good thing for these LSDs to have FXUSD minted against them, is because FXUSD just increases the yields in their own rebalance pools.
Yeah, I think going backwards from FXUSD back to a reserve, a reserve token, your limits are, it's basically kind of similar to going from FETH back to STETH, right? I mean, your limits are kind of like, what the collateral ratio is for it. That's right.
Well, no. So I think, so basically, let me, okay, I think I'm not doing a good job explaining. Let me try one more time. Once you're in FXUSD, you can exit via whichever token you have, or whichever tokens are available in the FXUSD reserve. Okay, so if there's tokens available for all three reserves in FXUSD, you can exit via any one of those tokens. Now, it's important to remember that like FXUSD is backed 1-to-1. So in 100% of cases, if you have an FXUSD, you can get $1 worth of of an LSD. No question, every time, right? Because it's all like, you can always redeem FXUSD to a rebalance pool that it has tokens for, or to a reserve that it has tokens for, right? So you choose. When you're basically, it's when you have FXUSD, you choose what you want to redeem it to. And one of the ways you might choose is maybe you're not actually wanting to redeem all the way back to reserve tokens. Maybe you just want to go back to a rebalance pool where you can earn some yield, right? So for example, you could mint some FXUSD with staked ETH and then decide that actually you'd like to earn some yield in the Frax ETH rebalance pool. So you can redeem your FXUSD for stable Frax ETH in that rebalance pool, right? Easy peasy. Now but again, once you do that, you no longer hold FXUSD. You hold staked Frax ETH in the stable rebalance pool. And if you want to go back to FXUSD, well then that is minting FXUSD with the stable Frax ETH, right?
Yeah, so there's some, there's obviously some nuances here, right? I think, yeah, Cyril, you basically are kind of like pulling it out there correctly. So your choices might get limited going back through.
Well, but again, you're right, and it's right to talk about these kinds of things. But I tend to think that practically it is not likely to be any kind of, it's not likely to come up.
Yeah, I think for most of us on this call, we're going to be okay.
Well, and even still, like, remember we talked about the risk management earlier, where the most bulletproof of the LSDs with the deepest liquidity and the most stability are going to have the biggest minting limits, and so very likely the majority of FXUSD is going to be backed by mostly these big guys, which have deep liquidity and are easy to swap and redeem, right? So and it's in order to see a situation where these redemption limits become even a factor at all, you kind of have to imagine this weird future where FXUSD chooses to include a stable leverage pair in its backing, but only at a very small cap, right? And that's totally possible. That is definitely something that could happen. But if you have to have that kind of a situation before you ever have a constraint about how can you get from FXUSD back to a specific backing reserve token. Exactly. We've talked about this, we've kind of talked about, what if we way down the road we choose to allow small amounts of non-LSD tokens in there. It's nothing for sure, but it's definitely possible, and it could be really cool. But in that case, yeah, with a low limit for something that's backing FXUSD, getting at those CVX in this case would be you'd have to make sure that there was enough CVX in the FXUSD backing. And as Cyril rightly points out, is that all of this, the worst case scenario for it is you exit via a different LSD and you swap, right?
Yeah.
And the nature of what we're looking at, especially in the beginning, all of these future ideas of farming tokens in there aside, this is going to be backed by the biggest and the beefiest and the best LSDs, right? So
you got it.
we want to make sure that, for the overwhelming majority of people, it's just not something you even have to think about.
Yeah, ultimately it's supposed to be a robust, powerful, decentralized, scalable stablecoin, and that's what we're shooting for.
Robo Odin figures that the Eigen restakers are going to nuke some validators, and that's how we're going to see some action. That's it's, listen, there's a lot of moving parts, and the whole restaking game that's going to be that's going to add to the possibilities for excitement.
Yeah.
But the other thing to remember too is that thinking in terms of, okay, well, what's the risk to FXUSD if quote unquote something happens to an underlying stable leverage pair? We have these risk limits to say only so much of those underlying pairs can actually be used to back FXUSD. So it kind of limits the total amount. It limits the total amount of exposure FXUSD has to that. But each individual stable leverage pair has these emergency breaks where they're able to, disable mint and redeem if the peg of so we were checking the price of the underlying reserve token because we're calculating these price changes all the time, right? And so there are situations where if something goes wacky with the price feed, or if the staked ETH token badly diverges all of a sudden from ETH, we have this e-break, and we've talked about it a lot with FETH and XETH, but we have this e-break that kind of prevents anybody from coming along and draining our reserve with because of a bad because of a bad price feed, or because of some temporary wobble or something, right? You don't want people to come in and be able to buy ETH out of your reserve at half the price. So we have ways to kind of protect against those kinds of issues to make sure that that we don't lose value from the reserve in a situation where there's like a technical failure.
Yep. Precisely.
Anyhow, I think that's most of it. I think we're getting to the top of the hour, and I know K-Mets, you have to bounce, and I think Paul does too. So let me zoom through the rest. So then, we get into the FXN gauge emissions part of the article. I think that's one that we all kind of understand the best because we've been talking about it for weeks, right? But basically, boy, wouldn't you like to, you give LSDs a tool to just one-to-one increase their on-chain liquidity through FXN emissions. That is really great for them, and it's really great for FXUSD because it just builds the pool of potential, possible liquidity for FXUSD.
It's a cool system, man.
Yeah, and that's about it.
Yeah,
sorry, I really got off on one there, so why don't we zoom through the rest?
That's a good one to get off on, man, because it's obviously going to be a huge product for Aladdin, as a whole, and the expectation is for it to be gigantic and a huge another weapon for protocols to use in their sort of liquidity building for their LSDs and for their treasury holdings. So
yeah, well, and you know what, having all of our friends online to hear me stumble and ramble my way through these points is that's it really highlights the value of the boosters, doesn't it, to translate this stream of garbage into awesome and exciting memes that properly communicate what's going on here.
They do a fantastic job.
And recorded forever by Craig. Okay, let's zip through what else we've got in the agenda. Not too much. You and I are going to jump on and make a little mini recording with Flywheel later. So
that's right.
We've got that's in the schedule, so we get that done, and maybe that'll head out. So we'll drop some links to that if that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Thought I'd give you guys just a teeny tiny sneak preview. There is when the time comes to launch FXUSD, we're going to need some kind of way in order to build seed capital for FXUSD. So we're talking internally on the team about different ideas there, and maybe some kind of a basically like a farming event, not dissimilar to what we've done with the rebalance pool farming events that have been running. But this will be a little different, where it'll be like bringing in reserve tokens, FXUSD reserve tokens, and earning yields particularly for depositing during that seeding phase.
Exactly. Yeah, working with our partner protocols. So we'll have more details coming out on that in the not too distant future.
And maybe more than just FXN available, maybe more than just FXN up for grabs in that in those seeding events. So we'll see how it goes. Something that came up that, again, just as a little throwaway comment just for everybody, as you know, when we launched F of X, the F of X token FXN was released. It has a liquidity mining schedule, right? Like about half of the FXN tokens that will ever exist are emitted on this like long 50-year LM emission schedule. But as you also know, the FXN liquidity mining tokens are not yet being emitted, right? We're waiting on bringing FXUSD up and running. And so at this point in time, FXN liquidity mining tokens from the initial allocation are being essentially burned every single week because they are gone forever. And in fact, every time we have these LM emissions that don't get distributed because we haven't turned it on yet, because we don't have we don't have the FXUSD mechanism with the multiple rebalance pools for it to make sense yet. So as soon as we turn that on, then those FXN emissions are going to start paying to like make this flywheel happen. But until then, they're all disappearing. So if you're watching our token supply and noticing that it's regularly going down, well, that's just the burn, baby.
Yeah, it's all part of the plan. So
yeah, just something that's kind of fun to notice, that even though we're kind of like vibrating, waiting for our audit results and to get that process finished, everybody who owns any FXN is in a way, you're earning a little bit, you're getting paid for the delay. So
yeah, there you go.
That's pretty cool.
a small side benefit there.
Little side benefit. Okay. A couple notes on Clever. So the fee transition has occurred. Extra 10% of the convex fee was enabled. This epoch, it was about 2,500 CVX, and that has been sent directly to the furnace. So we're going to be how capital moves around and see how that ends up looking. We will be, so there's been a lot of discussion in the community, and I'm sorry we don't have a ton of time to get into it again this week. We talked last week a lot about it, about the CLEV emissions for the booster program, and how the team had kind of just proceeded with cutting those booster CLEV emissions down at the same time as all of the other emissions had been cut down, and that wasn't well communicated. And so we went to we emitted the full CLEV booster round tokens for this most recent round that just finished, but the team's going to put up a proposal on the forum to just basically lay out some of the facts and figures for CLEV token emissions, keeping in mind that all of these token emissions by the protocol are essentially expenses, right? And so when you have you have to balance your expenses with your revenue, and until we get into a situation where the CVX bribe market gets kind of back on its feet properly, Clever is always going to be limited by that bribe market, by that liquidity market on CVX. And so there are some sort of like market related things that Clever is always going to have to be living with, again, because it is a mechanism that works directly on that CVX bribe market. So we're going to put out some facts and figures and proposal to the community for how we may need to adjust emissions for the booster program going forward to just get it in line with our other expenses. And it's kind of the nature of the game when you're kind of the nature of the game where if you have lean times on the supply side, like where we have with the CVX bribe market, then you kind of need to be able to adjust things to make sure that the protocol stays healthy. So
yeah,
we'll drop that on the forum.
Yeah, you got to make sure you and your partner are dancing in step together. So, there you go.
That's right. Yeah, we'll put that on the forum. I'm sure there'll be lots of discussion, and we'll decide, and we'll go through a full governance process to make sure that there are no surprises next time around, and talk about how we want to implement that.
Yep.
Couple more things, and that's the end. K-Mets, what do you have?
Yep. Let's see. Pretty much, concentrators concentrating. So not a whole lot of news to share there, but for Aladdin, we've got an X Space with Gravita today at 6 p.m. UTC. So that'll be on Twitter. So check that out. We'll be interviewing them. And then tomorrow, A-Team's going to be chit-chatting with Convergence about their big launch. And that'll be tomorrow at 5 p.m. UTC. So
awesome.
A couple things to look out for, and we'll keep you guys posted on that.
Incredible. And
yep.
My watch just buzzed that we've hit the hour.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Perfectly spread out, well timed. Definitely didn't spend 82% of our time on just one thing.
All right, kids. We'll catch you around the bend.
Guys, it was fun as always. Appreciate you, and hang out in the Discord, drop your questions.
Yep.
We're here.
See you later, guys.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.